George as well. Okay, so let's begin. Good evening and welcome to North Tyneside Council Standards Committee. My name is Councillor Martin Rankin and I am the chair of the Standards Committee. This meeting is being streamed live on the Council's YouTube channel to enable members of the press and public to observe the meeting, and I welcome anyone tonight. Before we move on to the agenda, I would first like to make it clear who is participating in the meeting. I would like to ask everyone present to confirm their attendance at the meeting. In order to do this, I shall now call out the names of the members of the committee. After I call your name, please turn on your microphone and camera and introduce yourself. Councillor Karen Lee is Deputy Chair.
Here.
Councillor Sean Brockbank.
Sean Brockbank, Councillor for Monks Eaton South.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Burdis.
I'm here, Councillor Brian Burdis, Valley Ward.
Councillor Sandra Graham.
Hello, Sandra Graham from Whitley Bay Ward.
Councillor Carl Johnson.
Hello, Councillor Carl Johnson from Battle Hill Ward.
Councillor Frank Lott.
Good evening, Frank Lott, Riverside Ward.
And lastly, Councillor Bruce Pickard.
Good evening, Bruce Pickard, Councillor Riverside Ward.
Chair, this is Councillor Hunter here as well.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Hunter. Sorry, of course, I can see you there. My apologies. I think we also have two of our independent persons here tonight. Is Mr. Stuart Green there?
Yeah, I'm here, Councillor Rankin. Hi there. Hi, everyone. Stuart Green here, independent person.
And Mr. George Clark.
Yeah, hi, Councillor Rankin, present and correct.
Thank you. I will now ask the officers in attendance to also introduce themselves. Mr. Bryn Roberts.
So, good evening, Chair. My name is Bryn Roberts. I'm the head of Law and Governance and I'm the monitoring officer.
John Barton.
Good evening, everybody. My name is John Barton. I'm a lawyer and one of Bryn's team.
And Joanne Holmes.
Yes, Joanne Holmes from Democratic Services.
Thank you very much. We also have other officers joining the meeting to provide technical support and to cover in the event of any connections being lost. To ensure that the meeting runs smoothly, can I remind participants to please turn off your microphone and camera when you are not speaking. Only speak when invited to do so by me and activate your microphone and camera before speaking. If any member or officer wishes to speak, please use the hand raise button or alternatively the chat facility. We shall now begin to deal with the business as set out in the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies, please?
There are no apologies.
Thank you. Item 2, substitute members. Have we got any substitute members appointed for tonight?
There are no substitute members.
Item number 3, declarations of interest. Do any committee members have any interest that they would like to declare in relation to any items on the agenda tonight? And there's nothing there, thank you. And item number 4, which are minutes. We are asked to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the last meeting held on the 12th of November 2020. Unless any member now indicates otherwise, I shall take it that the minutes are confirmed and noted. Okay, I'll take those as being confirmed and noted. Item number 5, LGA Model Code of Conduct. Can I invite John Barton to present the report? Members of the committee will have the opportunity to ask questions following the presentation from the officer. It is recommended that the committee establish a working group to consider the LGA's model against the authority's current code of conduct and make recommendations as to whether any amendments should be made to that code of conduct. Over to you, John.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, as you'll see, the purpose of the report is to inform the committee of the Local Government Associations, that's the LGA's Model Code of Conduct, which was published in January 2021, and to set out the differences in the LGA's Model Code and the authority's current Code of Conduct. And as you've just set out there, Chair, the recommendation of paragraph 1.2 is for the committee to establish a working group supported by the monitoring officer and his team to consider the LGA's model code of conduct against the authority's current code of conduct, and for the working group to make recommendations as to whether any amendments are needed to the authority's code of conduct. In terms of information or background, Chair, the LGA, as part of its work in supporting local authorities to achieve and maintain high standards of behaviour, has drafted this model code of conduct appearing in Appendix 1 of the report. And as you'll all be aware, all local authorities are required to have a code of conduct, and the LGA model code of conduct, as with the authority's code of conduct, has been produced to assist councillors to understand the behaviour expected of them when performing their role as councillor. Now, the LGA said that it will review its model code of conduct annually to ensure that it remains fit for purpose. And in reviewing the model code, it'll have regard to advances in technology, particularly in relation to social media, and of course, any changes that there may be in legislation. The differences between the LGA's model code of conduct and the authority's code of conduct are set out in the table, appearing at pages 8 to 15 of the papers. And broadly speaking, the model code of conduct and the authority's code of conduct are already similar, but there are some areas of difference. And it's for this reason that it's recommended that there be this working group established to work through those differences and recommend any changes that the group thinks should be made to the authority's code of conduct. Chair, if the committee accepts that a working group be established, then that working group will be required to report back to the committee. And if the working group recommends that changes be made to the authority's code of conduct, the committee would need to refer any proposed changes to the constitutional task group and then on to full council for approval and adoption. And as you'll see, it's suggested that the working group be made up of 4 members and its composition would be on a political balance at that time of establishment. And the table appearing at the report, pages 8 onwards, as I say, it sets out the differences between the model code and the authorities code. That's the report for consideration, Chair. Happy to answer any questions if I can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Just to make it clear, we're not necessarily here tonight to discuss the differences between the report. The report itself is simply around the recommendation to establish a working group to discuss those recommendations. Could I take any questions, please, for John?
Yes, Chair, I've got a question. Is my hand up?
It is, yes, Fran.
Right. I welcome the report, and I'll be quite happy to serve as a member of the subgroup. I've got 1 or 2 observations, but the question I was going to ask relates to page 10 in the table. It begins under the LGA column. This code of conduct applies to you as soon as you sign, etc. And I don't know if I've misread it, but lower down it said the code of conduct applies to you when you're acting in your capacity as a councillor, which may include when. And then the first bullet point says you must use your position as a councillor, which of course we shouldn't. And the second bullet point says your actions would give the impression to a reasonable member of the public with knowledge of all the facts that you are acting as a councillor. And I couldn't actually see anything wrong with that. So I was wondering if there was a word missing, or if there's something missing there.
Sorry, can you refer, Councillor Lott, to where you're referring on the page?
If I can be of assistance.
Page 10.
This is the application of the code and when it applies to members. We've briefly summarised our code as the code applies when you're conducting the business of the authority, or you're acting or giving the impression you're acting as a representative. The new standard one is slightly more verbose, but in essence it says the code applies in your when you're acting in your capacity and you do something wrong, you misuse that position, or a member of the public believes that you are acting as a councillor. So I think it's just different ways of expressing the same thing. Right. Perhaps ours is a little more succinct.
Perhaps. Thank you.
I can see a hand up from Councillor Graham.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. I too would welcome the setting up of a working group and think it's a great idea. And I think we need to perhaps go a bit further and just give this kind of direction to the group, if you would allow me, Chair.
Yes, in fact, that.
We know we've had some rather tricky situations lately and about people telling the truth. And so this is to do with the Nolan principles of integrity and honesty. In budget scrutiny, when despite being explained about reserves and how reserves can be used carefully, the opposition chose to publish something different, and would like to see something, if we can incorporate something within our code of conduct to cover that. So I'd like that specific thing looked at by the working group. And also, I've been out and about these past few days, every day out delivering, and a couple of residents have contacted me about imprints. So I'd wonder if we could look at those as well within this working group, about leaflets that are, I could tell they were immediately from the Conservative Party, but you had to look really hard for NTCF. So people are telling me they find this really devious. So it's to do again with transparency and openness. With the legal officer,
I suppose I'm happy to refer. Yeah, I'm happy to refer that the legal officers. I think my own view would be in relation to anything specific, Councillor Graham, at this stage. The code is already in, and it's there for those types of situations. So if residents feel that literature is being put through doors from any party where imprints are not clear, then that's something that will be referred to the monitoring officer. Yes. As it stands now, irrespective of anything in the future. And the same from the point of view of any sort of allegations of misrepresentations of facts as well. The code is in, we have protocols, etc., in place now to deal with those types of issues. So I'll refer on to the legal officers.
Thank you, Chair. If I step into that one, I think there are two distinct issues there. One of them certainly relates to how we deal with and interpret the Nolan principles. One of which is very explicitly honesty. So that's certainly within the scope of what we can talk about in the working group and see how we can work that. The second one relates to the issue of imprints, which probably falls outside the scope of the code of conduct. Because arguably you can have somebody who's not acting as a councillor when they are putting literature out. However, it's something that can be referred to the returning officer, who's the same person as the monitoring officer with a different hat on. And we can look at it in that context, and potentially imprints. Obviously, if an imprint is either not present or if it's deliberately designed to obfuscate the origin of the leaflet, then potentially it's a criminal offence. Yes. So we can refer that on to the police if that's considered appropriate.
Okay.
I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, it is helpful. Thank you, Bryn. Thank you.
Well, I think I saw a hand up there from Brian Burdis. Correct? No? There's no other hands up there at all.
There was.
Oh, no, sorry, Frank. Sorry, Councillor.
It was Brian.
Brian. Sorry, your hand's gone down again.
It was.
I'll bring in Councillor Burdis first. Councillor Lott second. Then.
Okay. It was with regards to the leaflet and the imprint. The leaflet itself could come from the Conservative Party and have nothing whatsoever to do with the local authority, which Bryn's already alluded to. And I'm not too sure whether imprints have to be on outside of election time, and that you don't have to have an imprint on. I don't know, but maybe Bryn can let us know that. But if it's to do with election, it has to have the imprint. But if it comes from a political party, it's different from coming from a council.
Absolutely, councillor.
Yeah. And all I would say is, obviously, if anyone has any concerns, speak to the returning officer. That's the key thing here. Councillor Lott?
Yeah, I forgot there was another point I was seeking clarification on. This relates to page 14 in the MIDI papers, point 12 in the North Tyneside Council Code, which refers to reporting any suspicion or intelligence or information you've received regarding safeguarding and children or vulnerable adults. Can I ask, does the responsibility to report not extend to other matters of dishonesty, corruption? Or is that covered elsewhere?
It's clearly not covered under that element of the Code of Conduct. Depending on the circumstances, there are specific duties imposed on individuals to report perhaps concerns about money laundering or things like that. But obviously the Code of Conduct isn't designed to do that. What this is trying to do is just ensure that we have safeguarding placed as a high priority within the authority. Now, again, this is something we can quite happily look at in terms of you must report suspicion or intelligence or information in relation to safeguarding of vulnerable children or adults or other criminal matters. The Code of Conduct is open to yourself. So if that's something that you would like to include within the scope, that's absolutely something we can look at.
Perhaps it should be considered by the working group, Chair.
Excellent, thank you very much. Are there any further questions at all? No? Okay, so the recommendation is set out on page 7 at 1.2. As I said, it's recommended that a committee establish a working group to consider the LGA's model against the authority's current code of conduct and make recommendations as to whether any amendments should be made to the code of conduct. Could committee members indicate that they agree with that, please, by raising your hands? And is there anyone against? I believe that has been carried. Thank you very much. Item number 6, Standards Annual Report. John, you're in the chair again.
Thank you, Chair. Purpose of this report is to introduce the Standards Committee draft annual report for 2020 to 21 for consideration by the committee prior to its finalisation and submission to the annual council meeting on the 20th of May 2021. And you see the recommendation is set out in paragraph 2. The committee is requested to consider any addition or amendments to the draft annual report at Appendix 1, to authorise the head of law and governance in consultation with the chair of the Standards Committee to finalise the report, taking into account any comments received in line with recommendation 1 prior to submission to the annual council meeting. As you'll all be aware, at the end of the municipal year, the Standards Committee is required to approve the contents of a draft annual report summarising the work of the committee over the previous year for submission to annual council. And the Standards Committee draft report for 2020-21 is attached to Appendix 1, and the report sets out the work undertaken by the committee and its subcommittees over the municipal year. Not surprisingly, the work of the committee has seen a reduction over the last year due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. There's been 2 virtual meetings of the committee being held since the first lockdown in March 2020. The report, as I say, the draft report is set out at Appendix 1. Don't propose to go through the report in any detail. I'm sure you've had an opportunity of reading it. Page 52 sets out a table detailing how complaints have been dealt with over the municipal year. And as I say, the recommendation is that if there's any amendments or additions to be made to the report, now is the opportunity to make those comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So the recommendation on page 45 is in 2 parts. The first part, to consider and suggest any additions or amendments to the draft annual report. Could I ask members of the committee, if anyone wishes to speak, to suggest any additions or amendments to this report, please? And I've got no indications there. Okay, so the second second part is to authorise the Head of Law and Governance in consultation with myself as Chair to finalise the report prior to its submission to the Council's AGM on the 20th of May 2021. Can I please have people indicate that they agree with that recommendation?
Agree.
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 Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. That is the end of the agenda, and so that is the end of the standards for 2021 committee. Thank you very much indeed. Good luck to everyone who's standing for election, and goodbye to anyone who isn't. Thank you very much.
Chair, before the meeting concludes, could I make a brief interjection? Can I place on the record my deepest thanks to Stephen Ballantyne, who would normally be at this meeting, but of course has left the authority today to join Sunderland Council. I'd personally like to wish him all the very best, and I'm sure the committee would like to extend the same good wishes to him. And equally, I'd like to thank John for stepping into the breach and taking on an area which is completely unfamiliar and doing it with consummate ease.
I think that both of those sentiments are highly appropriate, Bryn. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, John. Okay, take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Cheers. Bye now.
Good night, Chair.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Chair.
Bye.